got a little bit of a problem here. This stock on this French fuselage, as you can see, is split, and it goes almost all the way down to the center thimble here. You can see it. So instead of restocking this gun, I'm going to try and salvage it. It's not the best made gun, but it's just cheaper to go ahead and fix it if you can. So what I will do is I'll go ahead and epoxy bed this whole area of the barrel, and it'll drip through, of course, that crack before I close it up nice and tight and tape everything up and clamp it and all that good stuff. So I'm going to get prepared to do that. I've got the barrel here. I put some new tenons on, and what I'm going to end up having to do is of course grease this barrel up real good too. So I'll prepare it to do that, so that way it won't stick to the epoxy as it cures. And unfortunately, the only epoxy I've got right now is JB Weld, and this is probably one of the worst epoxies I've worked with. It says 5-minute epoxy. Well, figure it more like about 48 hours, because it does get hard, but it's like gummy for about 48 hours, and then it starts to cure up. So it's not really the best stuff for this unless you just have a lot of patience. So I've got the hardener and the resin here, and I've put a little bit of acrylic paint in there, and that'll give it the brown tone that I want when I start mixing all this together. And I won't mix this until I've got the barrel and the stock prepared for it, of course. So hang on, let me get set up here and we'll show you how to do this. Alright, the first thing I want to do is prepare the barrel, and of course this has a slot in here for the pin, and I don't want glue getting in there or else that'll lock itself into the stock, and we don't want that. So what I'm going to do first is simply put a piece of tape over top of this that's about the width of that tenon. See if I can do this without screwing things up too much. Alright. Gotta tuck that in. Alright, that's okay. Kind of tucking it down in tight against the sides there, so that way it leaves just a narrow spot in the glue where the tenon goes down into. You may have to clean up the inlet a little bit again later on. And now I've got a piece of paper towel here that's got some bearing grease on it, and that's all I use. Nothing special as a release agent. I've been using bearing grease for years now, and it's worked very well. But you want to get that on all the parts that the glue will come in contact with. It doesn't have to be a heavy coat, just enough to make sure that it's slick enough so that the glue doesn't adhere to it. Alright, I think we got that done. Set that aside for a second. Now to prep this, what I want to do is basically I'm going to put a piece of painter's tape along the bottom here, and all that's going to do is keep a lot of the excess glue from dripping onto my bench and the floor and all that, and just making a mess to clean up later. So any excess glue that squeezes out now will stay basically in the ramrod channel, and you can scrape that out again later on. Alright, so I've got a little gap, and it runs all the way from here all the way up to the end, and that's what we're going to be dealing with now, is getting all of this filled up. So theoretically the glue will seep down in there before I start clamping sideways. Let me go mix the glue, and I'll be right back, and then we'll have just a few minutes to get this in before it all hardens, starts to harden up or get gummy anyways. Alright, I got the glue mixing up nicely. And you can see I got a little of that acrylic paint in there to give it just a little bit of color so it doesn't look so obvious. If this were a really high class gun, you might want to try and blend the colors a little bit better so that it matches the wood you're working on. But also, this is going to be inside the barrel channel, so nobody's going to really see it. But any that runs through that crack to the barrel channel will be a little bit more hidden. Alright, I know it's starting to take effect because it's starting to get warm, which is what you want. So the trick now is to pour this in. Let it seep into that crack a little bit. You don't have a lot of time, so make sure you got everything kind of lined up, ready to go. And I can use the screwdriver to sort of force it down in that groove where the crack is. Now, if you're worried about anything dripping off or going on the floor, put some newspaper down on the floor, paper towel, something like that. Now we'll set the barrel in. And start squishing that into place. Put a clamp here where the tenon is. And I'm starting to see the glue squeeze up the sides here coming out, and that's what I'm looking for. Now I'm going to do two things. I'm going to use one of my favorite all-time clamps here. This is electrical tape. And since it's got a nice stretch to it, you can pull it in nice and tight, and it'll actually start to clamp things. And what this will do will help bring it in side to side as well as up against the barrel. Make sure it comes up to the barrel channel. I'm going to put some clamps on here. Alright, so I got the 6 clamps or 7 clamps on here holding all this together. Now it's just a matter of waiting until it starts to get a bit tacky. And it's starting to get tacky now. But I'm going to let this get another 2 or 3 hours to set, and then I'll pull the barrel out to make sure it's going to pop free because I don't want to wait until this glue has completely hardened, because then I may not be able to get the barrel out because it may have gotten into the pinhole or something. But anyways, that's what I'm going to do. It'll still be slightly soft enough to pull the barrel out. I'll check everything, make sure it's right, put the barrel back in place, reclamp it, and then I'll let it sit for about a day before I pull it out. So we'll see what happens at that point. Stay tuned. Okay, let's take a look at this. I did have to go in and put a little more epoxy in here because it didn't quite fill the area. But let's see how we got this done. So we want to quietly pry it out without breaking anything. And we got a nice fill. So that looks pretty good. Let me flip it over and let's check the ramrod channel. And you can see I put a 3/8 inch dowel in here, metalwork dowel, to try and keep the glue from flowing out too much. But it invariably will. So we peel the tape away. And you can see I'll have to re-inlet the thimble there because it got all filled in. But it looks good. I mean, it's nice and solid. That crack is pretty well gone now. So once I get all this cleaned up, and I want to go ahead and take the wood down a little bit because it's pretty thick side to side, and then I'll kind of show you what the end product here looks like. But you can see how it filled nicely, and this has been sitting for a couple of days to make sure it's pretty sound glue. But basically what it did here was it bedded the barrel nicely, and I may have to do it to the rest because down here where the joint is actually a bit of a step there, probably a 1/16 of an inch or so. So that's how high the barrel is above the barrel channel, and wouldn't hurt to go ahead and bed the whole thing, just make it a tighter fit.